All right, ladies and gentlemen, very, very excited about this next guest we're coming on to the podcast. He was the former head coach of Cal State Bakersfield, and he was also a three-time Division II national champion as a coach. He was also the former head coach / vice president of basketball operations for the Harlem Globetrotters. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Henry Clark. Henry, man, first off, man, I appreciate you taking some time to hop on the podcast with us, baby.
Oh, well, thank you. Hey, not a problem. Look forward to it.
Yes, indeed, man. So, I think we got to hop right into this thing talking about your collegiate coaching career. You were a part of 3 Division II national championship teams. So out of those 3, which one was your favorite?
Well, the one that was the favorite was actually the first one because people don't know the other times that we went back there, we lost 4 times before we actually won the first one.
Jeez.
But when we did have opportunity to win the first national championship, we went undefeated. We were 33-0, so that made it even more special.
Now, what was it about that season in particular, or that team, that helped you officially cross that hump and break through and actually win it?
Well, over the years, of course, you guys former athletes, just the recruiting process, you knew where you were missing some pieces. And we went out that year back in 92 and just collected a lot of athletes who were winners in high school and in junior college. And when you put a lot of winners together, or that winning mentality, things happen, and it turned out great for us.
I like it. Now, with the success that you had at the Division II level, did you ever consider making that jump to Division I?
No, I had friends that went from Division II to Division I, but I always wanted to stay at that Division II, or at that time we call it small colleges, because I had, more of opportunity to work with the athlete at that time. Some of them came from various, different cities, and just opportunity to work with them hands-on at the D2 level and not have all the help, assistant coaches, this coach, that coach. It was just you and them, and you had that special bond, and that was the part that I enjoy most, is just being with those guys and getting them through school as well as, basketball.
Now, it's funny that you say that, because you could just hear the difference in perspective. Some people would look at that as, man, this is more challenging because I don't have all of the assistant coaches and strength and conditioning coaches and nutritionists and all these other things. But for you, you like that.
Well, yes. It made me a better coach because you had to do it all. Strength and conditioning. The study tables, being in the library and basically roping off an area and have the athletes there. We did early morning check-ins where they had to check in before they went to their first class.
Nice.
And so you felt a connection that you were shaping and molding these athletes in a different way. And there wasn't a lot of, to use the word, entitlement at that time.
Understood. Now, I have a question about you growing up. We talked to former Auburn coach yesterday, Sonny Smith, and we talked a lot about inspiration as he was coming of age. Now, did you, growing up, have any people that inspired you, or was there anything that inspired you to get you where you're at today? Did you have any mentors that taught you anything?
Yes. I know people probably going to laugh at me, but I was a mama's boy.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I was one of 8 kids that she had, and my 3 older brothers and my 2 older sisters, because I'm in the middle, all play sports. And so when you come from a large family, and I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, it was the last name Clark in the neighborhood. So when you went to school, they already said, oh, so you're a Clark, so you're going to do this. You're going to do that. It was already predetermined what you were going to do. And so I chose basketball because my older brothers all did football and baseball, but no one in the family did basketball. So I did basketball, and that was my inspiration to try to be the one that at that time in the middle 70s, to get out of Cleveland by trying to get a scholarship. And that was my inspiration because my mom was a domestic worker who went out every day and cleaned homes and came home. And we knew that she could not afford to pay for us to go to college. So I used my athletic ability to garnish a scholarship to Washington State to play basketball.
Man, that's awesome.
That's pretty dope. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Now, speaking of back to your basketball career, especially when you were coaching, when you left Cal State Bakersfield, you were the 8th winningest active coach in Division II history. Number 8. So
I tell everybody out there in Deke that one, I had really good players. The community was really behind us, but it was really just hard work that you worked on. I mean, you just went in the gym with the guys early in the morning, worked them out. They went to class, came back for their second practice. It was a situation where coaches and friends knew that we were sort of, and not using this as the bad thing, we were like a boys' town. Some of the kids or players that we got had troubled pasts.
Okay.
And by playing basketball and being in Bakersfield, they started doing more positive things. And so coaches were saying, hey, you got to go to Bakersfield. They're going to change the way you need to be. And so through the network of friends, we were getting players who were really good, but some of them had a pass. Maybe they didn't graduate from junior college and have their associate degree, but they needed a chance, and that second chance really helped them.
Now, I like that. And I mean, obviously, when you look at your record while you were coaching, I mean, it speaks for itself in terms of the success that you were able to have. Now, my question is, in the midst of doing all that and being as successful as you were, you kind of, flipped the switch and took the job to go to the Harlem Globetrotters. So just talk about what went into that decision and why ultimately did you make that decision at that particular time?
Well, at that time, Mr. Manny Jackson, who was the owner of the Harlem Globetrotters and the first Afro-American basketball player at the University of Illinois in 1960, he was, as we spoke later, he was tracking me because I had sent him 4 basketball players from Bakersfield, and those 4 players turned out to be 4 of his favorite players because of the way they played and the way they acted in the community and the Harlem Globetrotter values. So he kept offering me the opportunity to come coach. And I said, no, I'm already coaching. I'm doing this. But I wanted to be an administrator to do the next level and not just coach the rest of my life. And so he gave me the opportunity to be vice president of the Harlem Globetrotters. And I can tell you guys, I had a lot of dreams growing up, but that was not one of them. But that was a dream that came true for me, and I could not turn that down.
Okay. And now, when you said a little bit that you had sent some of your players to him to join the Globetrotters, what was it about those particular players that you just saw and said that, I think their game could transition to the Harlem Globetrotters style of play, because it's very different than your traditional organized basketball?
Yes, it is. But they were really, really good people. And in order to be part of the Harlem Globetrotter organization as a player, you're meeting so many people. And so you are the first defense that they see. These gentlemen were all exceptional, young men. I mean, they were very affable. They spoke very well. No one was a stranger. So they had that part down. And then they were exceptional basketball players. And so when you put that combination together, an opportunity to learn from, again, Manny Jackson, who was vice president of Honeywell, who really stressed what the individuals needed to do, I just thought that package was too good for them to pass up.
That's really good. Really dope. I'm sorry. Now, with your decision to go to the Globetrotters, you've had multiple decisions to make throughout your career, whether it's coaching changes and whatnot. Do you have fundamental things that you think about, like pros and cons, just some type of, I guess, philosophy that you have whenever you're looking to make a life-altering decision?
Well, yes, the first thing that always comes, to mind is how's it going to affect my family? I have two boys, and my older son, Brandon, he was on the bench with me when I was coaching. He was a ball boy and all of those things. So I got a chance to spend a lot of time with him by coaching in Bakersfield, where he was born. So I really wanted to stay there. When the second son came along, he was a little bit younger. So when the Globetrotters made the offer to move from Bakersfield to Phoenix, since he was young, it was a good time for us to move because he had opportunity to learn, the environment of a different city. So family was always first in your mind when a decision came up regarding coaching. And earlier when Arthur asked about opportunity to go Division I and do those things, all those offers entailed moving. And I wasn't ready to move the family from Bakersfield to Seattle, Washington, or from Bakersfield to Washington, D.C. So I really just wanted to stay there with the family until something else came along.
Man, now talk a little bit about what it was even like being a part of the Globetrotters organization. I mean, I know me as a fan, I've been to numerous games and we see it, and it's more like you said, the entertainment element of it. But from your perspective, what was it like?
It was eye-opening. It was, as a basketball coach, you wanted to coach basketball, so you had opportunity. But as a teacher in me, just to see smiles on all the people's faces, from kids who were 3 years old to individuals, who were a little bit more mature up to 75. Just the smiles and anticipation and the oohs and the ahs that you would get from them when you were just entertaining them. And so for me, it was more that, you always thought basketball was a game played in the United States. But the Globetrotters exposed you to that this game is universal and everyone loves to play basketball no matter what. I think Arthur will attest to this. No matter how many double days they had in football, they'd be tired. But when you walk through that gym, you see the basketball laying off to the side. You pick up that basketball and you have a second burst of energy. And you want to play. So it was just the idea that basketball changed lives, but basketball opened up so many doors for people to give them exposure to playing the sport.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. When you're passionate about a sport, it doesn't matter how tired you are, how much, oh man, I'm done with it. You see that particular sport and you see that football or that basketball or even baseball for some people out there, and you're like, yeah, let's go give it a go today.
There's no doubt about it.
So now just talk about a little bit the difference of experiences for you when you were coaching with the Globetrotters compared to you coming from Division II, where you were, like I said, very, very successful in a highly competitive atmosphere. So from a coaching standpoint, how did those two situations differ?
Well, they differ because one was competitive when you're coaching, collegiate basketball, and the Globetrotters were more of entertainment. But also the Globetrotters, most people don't know, we had two teams always. There were more of the show team that you had the showman, and then you had a competitive team. And so it was one team on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. But the competitive team, we would play against colleges. We also played at the NCAA Final Four. We played against a Division I All-Stars. So it was always an All-Star game that was televised by ESPN. So you had opportunity to be entertainers, but you also had to be competitive because you had to be ready to play against those type of teams. And again, Mr. Jackson, the owner, we were preparing the years when I was coaching there before the Olympics in 2008. We were scheduled to play the Argentinian team, the team from Spain.
Wow.
Because you wanted to give those guys experience by playing against those individuals.
Man, see, I had no clue about it. I thought it was just one team and just the sole entertainment element of it. So, man, that's unique. That is very unique.
Yes, like I said, we had to have two teams and sometimes three because of the demand for the Harlem Globetrotters. You know, when you're in the major cities, you know, New York, LA, Miami, Dallas, you had Chicago, you had to stay there 3 days. Jeez. And you had to do double headers each day because the demand for watching the Harlem Globetrotters or have an opportunity to watch the Harlem Globetrotters were great because you would see people now and they would say, yep, I saw the original Harlem Globetrotters, not the new ones. I saw the original. And you always have to correct them and say, no, the original ones were in 1920. So you didn't see the original. You saw the ones that you remember, the Meadowlark Lemons, the Curly Nils at that time.
Now, did you have a chance to coach those guys as well? Talk about Meadowlark and Curly?
I did not have opportunity to coach them, but the Harlem Globetrotters were based in Phoenix, Arizona, and a lot of the former players live here in Phoenix, Arizona. So we were always at the beginning of the year, you know, meeting where you have the big tip-off. So all of the former Harlem Globetrotters would be there at that time. Mel Lark, before he passed away, was living out in Phoenix. Curly Neal was living out in Phoenix. And others, Manny Jackson, the owner, also was a former Globetrotter who stays out here in Phoenix. So you just had meet these individuals at the functions. And then the best thing about it, though, guys, is when you went to the different cities, it was always former Globetrotters in those cities that came to the game. And just to be able to share their experiences with the younger players was a treat.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I like it. Now, prior to joining the Globetrotters, you only coached. That was your only position. So talk about transitioning into that vice president role and how you ultimately adjusted to that.
It took a while to adjust. I have to be honest. The only time that I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning was to use the restroom when I was younger. But to have meetings at 5 a.m. in the morning in the corporate world, that was new to me. And you did not leave the boardroom. You were there at 5:30 or 6. Breakfast was brought in. You did the work. Noon would come around. Lunch would come in. You would do work. Then you would stay, and then dinner would come in. It was totally new.
Wow.
Because I was enclosed within a 4-wall area, and I was never used to that. It was always a window where I can look out, go for a walk, do things, go in the gym. But to be confined, quote, to the boardroom took a lot of adjustment on my part. I learned so much, but it was just a change, and it was a high level, high intense change with the Harlem Globetrotters.
Now you mentioned learning. Was there something in particular that you learned, or I don't know, maybe there was like a favorite thing that you took away with you from being in the Globetrotters organization?
Well, one of the things though, Deke, was in the collegiate world, the players signed a national letter of intent, and school was paid for them along with the books, and then they performed the service. At the professional level, it was contracts. It was the wording of the contract. It was trying to put a value on a player to be paid a certain amount of money. And that fell on me, and that was new because I was the type of guy that I want to pay everybody everything.
Yeah.
I want to give them everything, but it was like, oh.
See, you my type of guy. why didn't you? Where were you when I was going through contract negotiations? I could have used you.
Yeah, I understand. And so that was the part that I learned the most, and I enjoyed learning was the contract, language, and the bonuses and all of those things before I knew nothing about, because you were saying, well, hey, if you can do this, this, and this, then you would get this. If you're able to perform on the USO or the military trip, you will get this. If you're able to go to China or Europe, you would get this, But also, you talk to the players, the best thing about, one of the best things about being a Harlem Globetrotters, you're able to stay at home in the United States. So if you lived in Charlotte, you stayed in Charlotte, you came out to Phoenix to train, and then we went on tour, but you never had to really leave your home to go to Europe as the international players were doing. So the ability to stay home was good for the players, but for me, it was just learning how to do contracts.
Now, staying with the contracts, from a financial standpoint, how much of a price difference typically for these contracts were we talking versus the guys that went overseas? Were they comparable pricing, or was it a drastic decrease in price when you're staying with the Globetrotters versus taking some of these overseas contracts?
Again, it was it was by position. If you were a showman, the person with the ball and controlling everything, you were paid a really good salary. Some of the showmen probably were making up to $500,000.
Wow!
Damn!
What?
And it wasn't a lot of wear and tear on your body physically, but it was a lot of wear and tear on your body because you perform the same routine every day, and sometimes twice a day, not counting practice.
And you have to do the entertainment value as well, because y'all are up in the crowd doing meet and greets. So yeah, geez.
We had Globetrotter University where you get information to a crowd of people about the origin of the Globetrotters, but it paid well enough that the selling point was you did not have to leave home and to go to Belgium. You didn't have to be away from your family. And so to be able to make the same amount of money, have better, quote, health care for yourself, and to be around family and friends as you travel with that red, white, and blue uniform on, it was so special for those players. Other players wanted to have that opportunity that I played overseas. But you had to pick out the right person. So some of the players were probably better basketball players, but at that time we were trying to get 50% better person and 50% basketball and put it together, and we had a 100% Globetrotter.
I like that.
Now, what do you think are some of the biggest opportunities or challenges for the Globetrotters going forward?
Well, Globetrotters are, with the pandemic going on, the changes will be, a Globetrotter crowd can go from 12,000 people packed to playing in a stadium of 50,000 people packed. But the Globetrotters' philosophy has always to be meet and greet, where after every game we had an autograph session where we roped off the court and you sign autographs for 35 minutes. And so the meet and greet part is going to be the biggest change of the Harlem Globetrotters, because to use the word, everybody wanted to touch the Globetrotters, and now you won't have that opportunity until everything that's resolved about the social distancing and those things. And that travel also is something that you're going to have to look at as well.
You see any opportunities? I mean, just even like connecting with the younger generation coming up. Is there any, I don't know, like out of the box things that you could see the Globetrotters do?
Well, I mean, I think they really have done it all. I mean, in my opinion, I mean, they did the cartoons of the Harlem Globetrotters. Movie, there's been a movie about the Harlem Globetrotters. You always have celebrity athletes and celebrities in the movie industry play with the Harlem Globetrotters.
Honorary members, yeah.
You have Globetrotter camps around the country and around the world, and so that's going to probably continue. I would venture to say that you're probably going to be more of the, I'm probably not up to date, but the video game type situation where you can do hook shots, dribble, do the different shots and dunks as a Harlem Globetrotter. I think that might be one of the next steps that they will look into.
Yeah, maybe implement that into 2K or something.
Something. I'm about to say for me, I'm trying to sign up to be the honorary ice bucket member. You know, the guy, he runs through the crowd and he's like, oh, he throws it and it's nothing. I always wanted to be that guy. I'm just throwing it out there.
Right, yeah. And when we did travel to the advanced cities, you know, the different cities, we always had a advanced hype person who would go into that city ahead of time and promote the Globetrotters, and you would find out which people were going to be in the stands. I remember, you know, doing it. They throwing the confetti and then the water on Sharon Stone when we were in Los Angeles. I remember when we were in Miami at that time, it was Shaq's wife and his family. I remember in Tennessee, it was I'm just went brain dead. It was the women's basketball coach for the University of Tennessee.
Pat Summitt.
Pat Summitt. You know, so you picked out the individuals, and then of course everyone in the arena recognized the person you picked out, and that made it even more because it was that wow factor that that was implemented.
That's awesome, man. And trust me, that's one of my favorite parts of every time I've seen the Globetrotters. Who's getting the bucket? Who's getting it? Now, you're the uncle to the Kansas City Chiefs pass rushing phenom Frank Clark. Now, I just need to know, from your perspective, man, what's it like when you get a chance to see him just dominating in the NFL, man?
Well, it's an awesome pride feeling because I think I mentioned earlier that the last name Clark, we all quote, you had to live up to. I mean, when I was growing up, I had to live up to not only in athletically, but morally, you had to live up to that name. Frank is doing that now. The new generation, he is living up to the Clark name. He is showing that he's able to play professional football at a high level, but also he's doing the things that you want your nephew to do. And so he's giving back to the community with his free free football camp. At one point in time, Frank was homeless, when he was in Los Angeles, when he moved away from Cleveland. So he has a passion for giving different programs food as long as his time to them. So when you put it all together, yes, we are so proud of him to say there's a Super Bowl champion in the Clark family, but to see the growth that he has made as a young man coming up, because we remember him as that just a little kid who had to sit at the little small table in the kitchen while we're all eating at the holiday table, and he was at the kids' table. So just to see his transition over the years, that gives you a sense of pride right there.
Man, that's awesome to hear. And you're right. He's been doing an awesome job having an impact both on and off the field. So we definitely hope he continues that. And Henry, we appreciate you and hope you continue being great in all that you do as well, man.
Oh, no, you're correct. I'm currently teaching special needs students. I do what we call adaptive PE within Arizona. I go to different schools and I teach the students the importance of physical education and staying healthy. I've been doing that since I retired from the Globetrotters. I wanted to fall back on my education, and that was special education. So I'm happy doing that. I enjoy it, and I'm having the time of my life.
Just out of curiosity, why special education? Why was that on your heart?
It was Deke, when I was an athlete, I was falling behind in my classes because we were always on a road trip. And at that time, I wasn't the student that I should have been. And so in order to make up class time and work, one of the teachers suggested that I volunteer to be a hugger at the Special Olympics. And the hugger job was you stood at the finish line, and as the students came across the line from running, you gave them a big hug.
Man, that's awesome.
And I did that for my makeup, trying to get better grades.
Yes.
And I did that for the weekend. And I was on a Saturday. And then Monday, I went in and changed my major from business administration to special education.
Man, that is awesome. And yeah, if you go see any of the Special Olympics, man, it's an awesome just atmosphere when you're out there and you're seeing just how they're competing and just how excited they get, man, when they do cross the finish line and they are being able to do things that to other people seem simple, but to them it's a big accomplishment for them, man. So that's awesome. I definitely commend you for that.
Right, and it was ironic because the players will always say, "Coach must went to a Special Olympic event because practice was always hard." After I went to an event, because I'm saying I saw individuals who think to run 25 meters and giving it their all.
Yes.
And then I look at you guys who are God-given talent.
Get 'em.
And you don't want to do it. And it was like that. So they're always saying, Coach must went to a Special Olympics. Oh, because it's going to be tough today. So.
I like that though, man. Like I said, man, I definitely appreciate the work that you're doing though. And we appreciate you taking time to hop on the podcast with us, man. It's definitely meant a lot to us.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, again, like I said, you always think that you're done growing, but have an opportunity to speak with you guys. I think I have grown a little bit more today as well.
Well, and likewise, we appreciate that.
Yeah,
definitely
100%.
means a lot.
Well, thank you guys very much. Thanks for thinking of me.
Definitely, man.
No problem. Our pleasure.
All right, now.